more than ever, as we see what is going on in the world, how important it is that we become good stewards of what God has given us. It's so important, because without the good stewardship of you and I, it is going to become more and more difficult for us to be a good steward for the kingdom, to be able to give to the great kingdom work. First and foremost, our church. And folks, you've heard me say this. We're at the end of the year. I'm at the end of the year for financial issues. The ministry here, struggling, stressing a little bit over that, but it is what it is. I know one thing: whatever God has raised up for this ministry, will do exactly what God will have me do with it. And I'm grateful for that. But, I think of the churches. I'm going to talk a little bit about the charitable deduction and what's happening with all of that. And we will, we have to think about that. But, there was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal this morning under the wealth management section. It said, should we end the tax deduction for charitable donations? And there were two sides of the argument, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It was a very interesting article. I guess it was interesting. I found it all kind of a little bit annoying, but I'll talk about that. We need to know that, and all the more reason why we need to be a good steward. Let's just talk about some of the headlines. The U.S. economy turning the page on 2013, looking like the beginning of a more normal, and this is out of the Wall Street Journal as well, through a hearty, robust period of growth. So that is some of the expectations coming out of the Wall Street Journal, this article about the U.S. economy, talking about a hearty prospects for good growth for 2013. Look, folks, there's no doubt about it, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, that businesses, stocks, are probably, in my opinion, probably as fundamentally sound as they've ever been, or as they've been in the last 20 years. This idea of deleveraging that started in 2009, late 2008, 2009, going into 2010, continuing today, will prove to be one of the best things for companies as they shore up their financial statements and look more fiscally sound than they've ever looked. And that is certainly good news. Private equity firms, though, are using almost as much debt to fund buyouts. In other words, borrowing money. It's not that they don't have the cash reserves. It's that they're borrowing money for these buyouts at pretty much the same level as they did pre-crisis. Now, that is helping their returns, but it is hurting the risk component of what they are doing. But, it's very difficult when you are looking at the management of things in a private equity firm and realizing and seeing firsthand the cheap money that's out there. You almost have to borrow it when you look at the numbers. So that's what's going on there. Investors have been snapping up and really just flowing. We're seeing large cash flows into stocks, even though the fiscal cliff is looming. And despite warnings about the fallout that could happen with the stock market, people are buying dividend-producing stocks. They're not buying any stocks. They're buying dividend-producing stocks. And we're continuing to see that flow in, which is very interesting. Again, another thing I will talk about. Coming up tomorrow, the National Association of Home Builders releases Housing Market Index for December. That's coming up tomorrow. On Wednesday, we see the U.S. tallies for housing starts for the month of November. So we're going to see U.S. housing starts for the month of November. Let's see. Thursday, we have third quarter estimates. This is, the third estimate for third quarter GDP. So, estimate number 3 as to where GDP is in the third quarter. That is due out from the government. Also, of course, Thursday is we get the unemployment claims. Those filing for first-time unemployment claims will come out as well. The National Association of Realtors, again, on Thursday, post sales for existing homes for November. So we're going to have new house starts for November. We're going to have National Association of Home Builders release the Housing Market Index. And we are going to have on Thursday the National Association of Realtors posting sales for existing homes. On Friday, data on durable goods and personal income and personal spending for November on tap. That is my number of the week. That is my favorite number that is coming out over the week. Well, maybe two good numbers, or not two necessarily good numbers, but 2 numbers coming out Friday, which I'm going to watch closely, and the other one is consumer confidence sentiment coming out for December. This would be their final reading. This is the final reading from the University of Michigan's consumer sentiment. These are all numbers that we should watch very closely. The consumer sentiment number decreased dramatically the last go-around, so we'll see what this looks. But the durable goods orders, personal income, and personal spending for the month of November. Now, of course, the month of November is going to include those last few months of the last few days of the month, of course, the Black Friday numbers. So we'll watch that very carefully. I'm curious to see what that's going to look like, and that would be my favorite number of the week. Also, we've got manufacturing data coming out of the Empire State. Very interesting numbers. First, though, before we do that, I want to tell you that the stock futures right now are holding on to some gains despite some of the numbers that we've seen. Now, of course, Friday the Dow closed 35 points down and the S&P down 5. All the indexes, major indexes, in negative territory yesterday. So it looks like right now that U.S. stock futures holding on to some small gains even after the manufacturing index and some other data trying to get back some of the losses from Friday. Smith & Wesson on pre-market. I get a little alert on a particular system that I have. Smith & Wesson, as you know, some time ago entered my buy list. I hope folks bought it back then. I mean, it's off my buy list right now, but anyway, it's up 2% in pre-trade market trading. It's up 2%. And that would be probably true for the majority of gun manufacturing, ammunition, and others. And again, as we see this deeper descent into the depravity of the nation, and we see things of the shooting in Connecticut and other things, it reminds us, it gives us a reminding, and some people feel as though I guess it prompts some buying, and I'm sure Christmas has something to do with that, not to mention hunting seasons. But nevertheless, that's some interesting news. Crude oil futures lower today. And the headline is, as Washington moves closer to her fiscal cliff deadlines. Of course, Boehner putting out some new deadlines, proposals. He has proposed now raising the tax to those tax holders or those families that are making over $1 million a year and leave it at that. He's still trying to get off this $250,000 mark. He's raising it up to a year. That gives at least some room on that issue to negotiate. We know where the president is. He's at $250,000. Now we finally know where Republicans are. Republicans are at $1 million. So maybe they meet somewhere in the middle of that. Maybe neither one of them budge. And if nobody budges, it's likely to be the president that's going to not budge, not the Republicans. But anyway, that's where we are right now. So crude oil is down because apparently the dollar is gaining some strength on the euro and on the yen on the Japanese market. European stock markets still lower, and the European stock markets moved lower as a result of the manufacturing data that came out of the Empire State. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and then we're going to get to the phone.